Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including my latest NYPD Laughing in the Line of Duty. I hope everyone's having a good week. Before we get started with this week's story, I'd like to go to the pages of the New York Post to see what's going on in the New York City area from the crime beat. Here's a story that jumped out at me. Man found fatally stabbed outside Always Crazy New York City bar. An out-of-towner was found stabbed to death early Sunday outside a Bay Ridge bar labeled Always Crazy. The victim, 37 years old, from Pennsylvania, was not identified pending family notification, was allegedly knifed outside Catch 22 on 3rd Avenue, Brooklyn, about 2:50 a.m. Okay, so first of all, writers don't know how to write anymore. Allegedly knifed? They just said the guy is dead. So, unfortunately, this poor man visiting from Pennsylvania lost his life out in Brooklyn, and they don't seem to have a suspect or what's going on, but more than likely in a bar, the way it works, they'll put pressure on people that work at the bar itself. They need a New York State liquor license to operate there. I'm sure they'll come in with different organizations and lean on that place and yada, yada, yada. You'll find out that it's a neighborhood guy, or even if it's someone passing through, they'll be able to supply clues of he was paying with a debit card, he paid with cash. They'll find out who did it. Second story is cops looking for migrant accused of stabbing asylum seeker outside converted New York City hotel. Police are combing the Big Apple for a migrant accused of stabbing another asylum seeker during a scuffle outside a hotel shelter in Hell's Kitchen, law enforcement sources said. The suspect fled the scene after slashing the 35-year-old victim, who's also a migrant, during a dispute outside the Watson Hotel on West 57th Street, one of several hotels in the 5 boroughs that's been converted into a shelter during the migrant crisis. So, again, here are reporters not calling it as they see it. It's 2 illegal aliens that are in this country illegally, living, for whatever reason the city is housing these people, and one stabs another one. It's a shame. These people are here to stay, folks. I don't know the answer to it, but, you know, can you imagine 5-10 years ago, you go to New York City and you invest and buy a condo or a condominium in Hell's Kitchen, and you've got a great place in the city, you're close to work, you're walking distance to Chelsea Piers, there's every restaurant in the world now you can go to, it's at your fingertips, and now you've got asylum seekers running amok. It makes no sense. Now, this one's near and dear to my heart. NYPD rolls out barnacle windshield boots to force violators to pay parking tickets. The NYPD is unleashing barnacles to battle parking pirates. The department said this week it'll be using windshield boots, a 17-pound device that attaches to a vehicle's windshield like a barnacle and remains there until a scofflaw pays their tickets on illegally parked trucks. The contraption is also known as a barnacle device for its commercial-grade suction cups that attaches with 1,000 pounds of force, making it impossible to remove, like the sticky crustaceans on their ocean hosts, officials said. You know, probably about 30, 40 years ago, the city came out with those boots that they would hook onto your tire if you were a scofflaw or you were illegally parked. And those things are fairly easy to get off with a crowbar. These things, I saw the photo. It's this long yellow strip. It weighs 17 pounds. It basically covers your windshield so you can't look out or drive. But here's the thing. Those are going to damage windshields. You're talking about 1,000 pounds of suction. So what's going to happen is it's going to crack windshields. It's probably going to cause something around the glue holding the windshield in place that you're going to have leaks. And people are going to sue the city. It's going to take time to, make its way through the courts, but the city's going to get sued for this. Not only that, I'm guessing with a little WD-40 sprayed around the exterior of these suction cups, and once it gets in, that thing is going to pop right off, and Department of Traffic are going to find these things thrown off on the side of the street. The thing is that there's no parking in the city, unfortunately, and the city has basically pushed out the working class, or are on their way of pushing out the working class. So they got to get their money somehow to keep the city running. And that's to write people tickets. And I guess now they're going after commercial industry, because they say right now this is for commercial vehicles. But I'm sure if this thing works, they're going to make a smaller device and it's going to go on your car for a double parking ticket. It's unfortunate. It's the same as those red light cameras. They're just squeezing the working class out of the city. So here's one. Homeless man accused of throwing rocks through an NYPD precinct window. A homeless man allegedly caught on video hurling stones through the window of the Midtown South precinct this week has been arrested. You talk about balls that this guy walks up to a precinct, and it's not allegedly. I saw the video. The guy just walks up and just starts firing rocks at the precinct. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, what's going on in New York. I hate to beat a dead horse. And last but certainly not least, and this is my favorite, migrant influencer who encouraged squatting whines to New York Post that he's a victim of persecution in jailhouse interview. So I don't know if you guys have been following this. You had this young guy from Venezuela. He's here illegally. I think he's living somewhere in Ohio. He figures out how to use TikTok, and he starts making these videos encouraging his countrymen that, hey, you know, in the United States, if a house is vacant, you can break in and live there, and then if someone discovers it, you have to go through the court. It's going to take 100 years, so you should just squat. And not only that, he's showing these videos how he's collecting all sorts of benefits, and then there's a video of him handling a handgun inside a gun store, which is illegal for an illegal alien to be in possession of a firearm, even to touch it. So obviously he flew a little too close to the sun. Someone picked up on that, and I think he's got a couple of open criminal cases. So if there is a silver lining to this story, this migrant influencer is probably going to get sent back to he'll be one of the few that gets a kick in the ass and gets sent back to his country. So, you know, again, you fly too close to the sun, something bad is going to happen. So that brings us to this week's episode. And I was trying to figure out what story to tell. I'm going to tell a story, if I got time, a couple of stories from my book, NYPD, Law and Disorder. And that book's got a lot of funny stories in there, what goes wrong. There's a lot of embarrassing stories of things that happened to me, including this one. So let's go back to when I was in high school. I'm probably in junior year. I'm going to a Catholic high school in the Bronx. And it was during a free period. And I'm kind of or I might have cut. I don't remember. I'm roaming the halls. And I see a bunch of my friends inside the classroom. And I'm goofing around. I'm, making them laugh and stuff. And the English teacher that was teaching the class, which he was a nice guy, but for whatever reason, I got on his last nerve. He comes out into the hallway, and I go to walk away, and he goes, Vic, come here. Now, my Catholic high school, there was corporal punishment, and they'd give you a crack if you stepped out of line. And I just kind of backed up. He goes, I'm not going to hit you. Come here. And I trusted the guy. So I came over, and as I got within striking distance, he wailed back and gave me an open hand bitch slap in the face. So now I'm 16, 17 years old. My first reaction is when you get hit now, I wanted to pounce the guy. But, I mean, I had really good parents, and they always told me, we want the best for you. Don't get yourself in trouble. And I also knew if I fought this guy or put my hands on this guy, I would get expelled. And, it just would have been a black mark in the family. So I let it go. But I never forgot it. And the following year, I graduate high school. I joined the NYPD. But I never forgot about it. So what winds up happening is about 4 or 5 years later, I'm in the precinct's anti-crime unit. I'm working in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. And we're getting killed with robberies. But in particular, it's strong-arm robberies. And what it is there's this white guy in his 30s. He's going around the precinct. And what he's doing is he's jumping out of this car. I think he had like a little red Dodge Shadow. He would see a woman alone in the street with her handbag. He would stop his car, jump out, and pull her handbag, basically purse snatches before jumping into his car and taking off. And he had done 5 or 6 of them. And each incident got a little more violent because a couple of times the women held onto their bag and either punched him in the face or dragged him on the floor. So it was only a matter of time before somebody got hurt. So during one of the incidents, a woman got a hold of the guy's license plate number. So great. My partner and I took the report. we're going to go find this guy. But we find out that he lives in Putnam County. So they're not going to let, precinct cops go up to Putnam County to arrest this guy. It's going to get kicked to the detectives. But, we got a pat on the back. Great job, guys, yada, yada, yada. So while the detectives are trying to locate this guy, a couple of days later, my partner and I are driving around, and we used to buzz the short-stay motels and run plates. And just short-stay motels, there's always something going on in there. I one time found a girl that was a runaway from Rhode Island. They're seedy places, but for cops, you can come across a lot of good arrests in these places. So anyway, we see the guy's car. We see the bad guy's car that's been doing these robberies. We run the plate, comes back to the guy. So we wait, and eventually the guy comes out of his room. He approaches his car. My partner and I pounce on this guy. It was a Saturday. I'll never forget. So we bring him into the station house. Most of the detectives aren't working, or they didn't want the arrest, so we took it. So what we did was we started calling up the victims, and we said, listen, we've got the guy that we think robbed you. Would you come to the precinct? Would you come and view a lineup? So I think it was 5 or 6 women, and my partner got off the phone with the last one, and he says, this one doesn't want to cooperate. She wants nothing to do with it. She's sorry she even filled out the report. And I go, well, where does she live? He goes, she lives right around the corner. I says, I'll tell you what, you keep an eye on this guy, which he was like a troll-like creature, and we'll get to that later. I says, I'm going to go around the block, and I'll close the deal. I'll get this woman to come in and view a lineup. So I jump in the police car. I drive a couple of blocks away, and it was a beautiful house. It was a little Tudor house, and I knock on the door. Door opens. And who is it but my high school teacher that slapped me in the face like 5, 6 years ago? And he looks at me and he goes, Vic Ferrari. And I said, how you doing? Mr. Smith, how are you doing? And he's like, oh, great. Come in. And he goes, what are you here for? And I said, your wife was robbed a couple of weeks ago, and my partner just got off the phone with her. And I would have thought he would have started talking to me about that. He walked over to his coffee table and picked up a Bible. And he says, have you read the good book? And I said, well, I went to Catholic high school. I don't get it. And he goes, I was saved as you can be saved. So he became a born-again Christian, which is all fine and dandy, but I need his wife to come to the precinct to view this lineup. So I said, Mr. Smith, we'll get to this later. You can save my soul later. I need you and your wife to come down to the 4-8 precinct to view a police lineup at 6 o'clock, right? So he says, all right, I'll be down there. I said, okay, great. So I go back to the precinct. We grab the little troll. And this guy was a crackhead. He's coming off his high. He wasn't a tough guy, but he was just nasty. He was ornery. It's like he didn't really want to fight with us, but he just was, everything was F you and screw this. And just, he was a pain in the ass to fingerprint. I remember that much. So the reason we brought him to the 4-8 is on the second floor of the 4-8 precinct in the Bronx, you had Bronx homicide. And they had detectives up there that were experts in doing police lineups. So if you ever wondered how a police lineup goes, it works like this. At my job, those detectives know street people, and they have their phone numbers, and they'll call up a guy and they'll say, I need 5 black guys as fillers, 5 short black guys as fillers, or I need 4 white guys as fillers. So what'll happen is one of these street people will come into the precinct, they go upstairs, the detective brings this person into the cell, he'll take a good look at the guy and say, okay, I'll be back. And within a half hour, they find 5 or 6 people to be in this police lineup. So it's Saturday, and in typical Bronx fashion, there's probably 4 homicides going on, and so the detectives are out. So there's no one to help us put these lineups together. So I told my partner, let's do it ourselves. So now the victims are starting to arrive. They're down inside the 4-8 precinct station house, wandering around the lobby. They're starting to get antsy, and we have no fillers. So my partner goes, where are we going to find 5 white fillers? And we couldn't use cops because this guy was so ruddy and grungy. Every cop has got short hair and clean cut. This guy was a mess. So I said, I don't know, but give me the keys to the car. I'll figure out something. So while my partner is babysitting the bad guy and the people downstairs, the victims, I jump in the car and I drive to the Fordham Road section of the Bronx. And there was this bar on Fordham Road, I think it was called Clark's. And the neighborhood had changed a lot in the years. That used to be like a happening bar, and now it was just kind of like a hard luck bar with like the neighborhood people that were still around and the college students that would have a fake ID that could drink. So I walk into the bar, it's dimly lit, And as soon as I walk in, even though I was in plain clothes, everybody at the bar knows I'm a cop. I'm not from the neighborhood, and I got a police radio. So I walk up to the bartender, and I says, listen, I need 4 or 5 guys to be in a police lineup. I says, and I'll pay them $20 each. He goes, for $20 each, you'll have to beat this crowd off with a stick. So he lowered the volume on the jukebox. He had like this remote from behind the bar. He lowered the jukebox, and he said, the floor is yours. So I said, excuse me. I says, I'm Police Officer Ferrari. I says, I need 5 guys to stand in a police lineup for 20 minutes. And it was odd. Like the whole bar kind of surrounded me. And I felt like I was a casting director on a movie set. I'm like, nope, too clean. Nope, yep. So I pulled five Hall of Fame drunks out of that bar. I packed them into the back and front of my Ford LTD. I drive them up to the 4-8. I bring them in through a side entrance so the people downstairs don't see them. I bring them upstairs, and my partner's like, oh, thank God. He goes, this guy is just out of control. He's busting my balls. The bad guy. I said, okay, well, let's get him in a lineup. So we put the fillers in this room, and basically everybody takes a seat, and they hold up a piece of paper with a number on it. So you give the bad guy the option of where he wants to sit in the batting order. So I think he wanted to be, for the first couple of lineups, he goes, I want to be number 2. So, all right, you sit in number 2. So we're getting them all seated in the seats, right? We're calming everybody down. And so as they're sitting down and getting situated, one of the drunks asked the bad guy, he says, what did you do? And the bad guy turns to the drunk, goes, what are you, a cop? And the drunk turns around and says, how about I knock what teeth you have in your mouth out of your face? So we had to kind of break that up as they started getting a little chirpy. So what winds up happening is we're bringing up the victims one at a time, and it's just like you see on TV. You got the bad guys and the bad guy and the drunks behind the glass sitting down holding their numbers behind that one-way glass. My partner is inside with them. I bring the people up in the next room, and I basically say, listen, do you recognize anybody from behind the glass? And if you recognize somebody, tell me where you recognize them from. Because you don't want to say, take a good look at number 3, or it's supposed to be fair and impartial. So one by one, each woman's coming in number 2, number 2, number 2, right? So I think it was 5 lineups. So the first 4 went great. The 5th one got weird because, of course, that would be my former Catholic high school teacher and his wife, right? By this time, he's worn thin on everybody downstairs because he brought the Bible with him down to the precinct, and he's trying to convert cops and the other victims to Christianity. And I'll never forget, the desk officer of the 4-8 said, come over here. He goes, are you almost done with this lineup? And I go, yeah, Sarge, why? What's up? He says, well, that guy is driving everybody crazy. He goes, and I don't care what kind of arrest you have. I'm going to kick him out of the station house. He goes, because I can't operate in here with him quoting the Bible. I said, no. Last lineup, we'll bring him upstairs, right? So just before I bring my Catholic high school teacher and his wife upstairs, the bad guy, the little troll, wants to change his order in the batting order. So he goes, I don't want to be number 2 anymore. So we says, okay, fine. Where do you want to sit? He says, I want to be number 5, like a kid. So I said, okay, take number 5. So he gets up with his number, walks over to the drunk, number 5, throws his piece of paper at him, throws the 2 at him, goes, get up, I'm sitting there. So that guy gets up, grabs him by the shirt collar, and rams him in the wall. And so, whoa, break it up, right? So we had to break it up. So the drunk goes over to number 2. The bad guy goes over to number 5, right? I tell my partner, you got this? He goes, I got this. I said, all right. I go downstairs. I bring up my former high school teacher and his wife. They go behind the glass. They're looking at the lineup, and she looks right at number 5. And I said, do you recognize anybody? And she starts crying. And I get it. She's being traumatized twice. This guy got up in her face and hit her and took her bag, and now she sees him again, right? And she starts to cry. And I said, Mrs. Smith, do you recognize anybody? And she goes, I can't do this. And I says, you can't do what? She goes, I can't participate in this. I go, well, it's not really has nothing to do with participation. She goes, I can't ruin this man's life. And I went, oh, boy. And I says, that's fine, but do you recognize anybody? While I'm talking to her, right, I noticed that the drunks are now arguing with the bad guy in the lineup. I'm like, this isn't good because now their heads are turned and I can't hear them, but there's conversations exchanging. All of a sudden, in the middle of this police lineup, 2 or 3 of the drunks jump up, grab the bad guy, pull him out of the chair, and now there's a fight. So I tell the victims, just wait here. I run behind the glass on one side. My partner runs on the glass on the other side. And we're breaking up a fight. We're breaking up the drunks that are starting to smack around the bad guy because he was getting mouthy with them. So we separate everybody. I get everybody situated, right? Just as I'm about to leave the room, the bad guy turns around and yells, "Did she pick me out?" Well, now the lineup is blown because he just admitted who he is in the lineup, which I had never heard before or after. So we wound up having to throw that lineup out. But on the good side, he was picked out of 4 out of the 5 lineups. He didn't go to trial, and he wound up getting 7 or 8 years on a plea bargain for that. And that's a story from my book, NYPD Law and Disorder. And the chapter is called "Revenge is a Dish Best Served Wearing a Police Uniform." And it's true. And I never used my my power or my uniform to get back at people. But, I mean, I just found it so ironic that I run into my former high school teacher and his wife, who's the victim of this guy that did a robbery, and basically the arrest turned to crap. So I got one more story to tell from that chapter of "Revenge is a Dish Best Served Wearing a Police Uniform." I'm in sophomore year of high school, and I'm taking chemistry. And there's a lot of math in chemistry, and I'm terrible in math. And I had this 30-something-year-old divorcee female teacher, and she was more interested in finding herself a husband than her students. And granted, I didn't do myself any favors as far as not putting in the work trying to pass her class. But once I realized I passed the point of no return and I knew I was going to go to summer school, I was a pain in the ass in class. And it got to the point where she didn't even care if I was in the classroom or not. She was always flirting with the other male teachers and whatever. So I wind up going to summer school. I'm a little bitter. Well, love was in the air that spring. And what happens is she marries another teacher in my school. I come back to class for junior year, and she marries my biology teacher. So the guy has a hard-on for me the second I step in the classroom, and it's a repeat of last year because now he doesn't like me. He's being a pain in my ass. And again, it's on me. I didn't put in the work, and here comes summer school again. And what winds up happening is one day I cheated on a test. So I sat between 2 really smart kids. And what I did was I got a little bit of something from one kid, I got a little something from the other kid, and I got a higher grade than the 2 geniuses on either side of me, right? So he knew there was no way, me being a C- student, all of a sudden for me to pull like an 100 on a test. So he makes me come up in front of the blackboard, and he tells me to draw up this equation or explain however I came to this conclusion of this answer. So as I'm trying to figure this out on the blackboard, I'm making a fool out of myself. There's a knock on the door. And the brother that's in charge of discipline says, "Hey, I'd like to have a moment with Mr. Ferrari." So he goes, "Take him." So I go outside, and I know the jig is up. I know he told this brother that I cheated on my test. And this is an important lesson to you out there. The brother says to me, "Vic, do you know why I want to talk to you?" And I says, "Yes, brother." And he goes, "Why do I want to talk to you, Vic?" And I says, "Because I cheated on Mr. So-and-so's exam." He goes, "Well, that's not why I wanted to talk to you about." And I'm like, oh, God. He had busted me for cutting out of class because Post-it notes were new back then. So what teachers would do is, if you weren't in class, they would write your name on a yellow Post-it note and stick it outside the door. So I got my hand on a Post-it note book, and what I would do is I would go by the classrooms, pull the thing off with my name on it, and write out another one. Sometimes I would put my friends on there and stick it up there. So he had busted me cutting out of class, and now on top of that, now he's got me. I just admitted to cheating on a test. So I had summer school and many years of detention for my troubles. So what winds up happening is I graduate Catholic high school by the skin of my teeth, and a couple of years later, I'm an NYPD cop, and I get assigned to election duty at a middle school to do the election detail in the Bronx. So I'm at this Bronx middle school, and I'm, just watching the polls, and everything's moving, fine. And I look over, and who do I see? My former chemistry teacher and her husband, and they're voting. And now this is like 5 or 6 years had gone by, and I'm like, well, I'm happy they're still together. Let me give them a touch a little bit. So I watch them. They go into the booths. They vote. They come out. And I'm just kind of following them as they walk out. They walk out of the school, right? So once they get a couple of steps out of the school, I throw my arms around the both of them. I go, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Johnson, how are you? And they're looking at me like they kind of know where they know me from, but not. And it's like, oh, wow, Vic, how are you doing? I says, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for, all your hard work that you put in with me. And, it made me the man I am today. I'm just giving them this BS story. They're like, okay. And I says, well, take care. If you ever need anything, you know where to get a hold of me, and blah, 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 blah. And they left. And I just thought it was funny. I says, I definitely gave them something to think about. But again, it was on me. I should have put in the hard work as opposed to goofing around through high school. The funny thing is, I have dreams about that now. I don't know if any of you people out there do, but I have these dreams where I'm sitting in class and I have no idea what's going on. And then I'm like, should I double down and try to really learn what's going on, or screw it, I'm going to summer school anyway? But I did go to summer school, and maybe that paid off because I got to get the dream job that I wanted, and I got to become a New York City police detective. So that's a couple of stories from my book, NYPD Law and Disorder. You can preview it for free on Amazon. It's a good read. So as always, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my friends in Sydney, Australia, New South Wales, Perth, Western Australia, Houston, Texas, New York, Russellville, Arkansas, and Ackland, Pennsylvania. If you work in law enforcement or have a interesting criminal background and would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. On YouTube, please hit the subscribe button if you like the content, and hit the like button. If you enjoy the content of this podcast, please check out my Amazon author page. Type in my name, Vic, Ferrari like the car, where you can preview all my books for free, including NYPD, Law and Disorder. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and putting up with this bad haircut. Hopefully it'll grow out soon, and I'll have another episode out next week. Thank you.